Imagine there were two people having a conversation in 2022. Person A was about to leave for a spaceship going 99.999999999% the speed of light, and was set to be back in exactly 1 year, while Person B would remain on Earth. To have this work, the spaceship will travel half a light year, turn around, then travel back to Earth. Special Relativity explains when approaching the speed of light, or being exposed to massive bodies, how time can slow down for you from the perspective of outside observers. Time is relative, meaning that its flow is not always the same from the perspective of two different observers. Both Person A and Person B have two different scales of time, and even though their own individual timelines do overlap, when we limit our view to only focus on their passage of time relative to their consciousness and what they're experiencing, it leaves room for a really interesting question about the nature of free will. Using a calculator, we can see that the amount of time it would take a journey like this from an observer on Earth, Person B, as well as the amount of time it would take from the perspective of the spaceship and anyone in it, aka Person A, when converting that into minutes, the journey from Person A's perspective would only take about 2 minutes. So what do we do now knowing this information? Once again, it's good to note, we're not focusing on the general passage of time relative to the universe. We're focusing on two different passages of time relative to Person A and Person B, and how their consciousness experiences them. So, relative to Person A, let's say 2 minutes pass for them. Within that time, while he's on the spaceship, back on Earth, an entire year has just passed. Within Person A's 2 minutes, Person B has experienced an entire year go by. He left in 2022, 2 minutes passed, and now he's processing information from 2023. Keeping that on hold for a moment, let's say we go back to just before Person A departed. Now we focus on Person B's perspective. Person A leaves for the spaceship and 2 minutes pass. He's still in 2022. Nothing much changed. He now has to wait an entire year before he can converse with Person A again. From his perspective, Person A is just moving really slowly in time as his spaceship approaches the half a light year mark. The point is, at the end of both of these timelines, both of them could say that they had a conversation with the other 2 minutes ago, and be correct, despite one being a year ahead. Relative to both of them individually, only 2 minutes passed. They only processed 2 minutes of information, yet where they ended up in time after those 2 minutes are drastically different. One is processing information from 2022, while the other is processing information from 2023. Let's say that after Person A returns to Earth, he immediately has another conversation with Person B in 2023. For Person A, the time between the initial conversation and the final conversation was only 2 minutes. And for Person B, the time between these two conversations is an entire year. The same amount of time has passed relative to them individually, yet Person B has to wait an entire extra year to experience the conversation that he has with Person A in 2023. That means that everything Person A experienced that was different with the world within the 2 minutes that he traveled, everything that Person B does and the world does within a year has to lead up to that moment that Person A experienced. And because technically, relative to their own perspectives, it was the same amount of time, Person A experienced and processed the year 2023 before Person B was able to. And because the information of that year already exists in his mind, and everything on Earth has to lead up to his experience, does that mean that everything is predetermined? What we say, when we do an action, when we walk, when we make a big decision, it all just leads up to a future that someone has probably already experienced? It's like this. Think of any decision you've ever made in your life. In that moment, you could have picked anything, but now you're thinking about it in the future. It's already happened, and nothing can allow you to change your decision that was already made. If someone has the ability to access the future earlier than another person can, relative to themselves, they can think about what's happened in the past the exact same way, and how nothing can change what's already happened, while the other person is still living their life out in that quote-unquote past time. You can argue that that person can't change any decision that they'll make because it's already been made and the effects have been experienced already. This is why it can be argued that all of time is predetermined, and this is what's so scary about the nature of our reality and there's no way of proving or disproving it. It's unknown, but it's also very fascinating. If you're still not able to fully wrap your head around this concept, I have one more thing to show you. It's less thought experiment and more visual. I've constructed an animation of the scenario that I've described, but for the sake of time, instead of 2 minutes to a year, I'm going to compress that time down to 5 seconds to 30 seconds. For the person getting on the spaceship, their time would have advanced 30 seconds more than the person on Earth. Now, obviously, when we look at the time as if it was relative to the universe, the person getting on the spaceship would see time passing for the person on Earth a lot quicker, and the person on Earth would see time passing for the person in the spaceship a lot slower. But this is not how they both individually process that situation. The person on Earth is not actually living and experiencing their life at hyperspeed, it's just a way for time to stay synchronized with the rest of the universe. So in this visual example, I'm going to play 2 clips. The top will be the perspective of the person getting in the spaceship, and the bottom will be the perspective of the person staying on Earth. Note that there won't be any speeding up or slowing down of time, simply because we're looking at both of these scenarios from their own different individual perspectives. Notice how in this animation, relative to their own consciousnesses, the person on the spaceship got to experience what would happen to the person on Earth before his consciousness even got to experience it. The argument is, if the person in the spaceship was able to experience the after effects of this moment before he was even able to experience it, that means nothing could have stopped that from happening, and it was set in stone for him.